Chapter 7. The moment they stepped into their apartment, the atmosphere shifted. Izuku's eyes were wide with a mix of fear and disbelief as he turned to face them, urgency lacing his voice. He began sharing what had happened, not in a straightforward manner, but rather in snippets that hinted at the chaos of the day. His hands found refuge in Butters' fur, fidgeting as he spoke. "They tried to hurt them." Izuku's voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with worry. He could still feel the panic rising in his chest at the thought. "And then they got big." A dense silence enveloped the room, suffocating yet heavy with anticipation. Hizashi Yamada blinked in confusion, his brow furrowing as he processed the information. "Define big," he finally managed to ask, his voice steady yet tinged with disbelief. Izuku hesitated, searching for the right words, his mind racing through the surreal images. "Lion big?" he eventually replied, his tone barely above a whisper. Hizashi turned slowly, almost like a puppet on strings, to face Shota Aizawa, who had been quietly absorbing the details. The look on Hizashi's face was one of incredulity. "Shota," Hizashi said, as if trying to ground himself in the absurdity of the situation. "Yeah," Shota replied, his expression stoic but his eyes betraying his surprise. "Your cat turned into a lion," Hizashi stated matter-of-factly, the gravity of the statement sinking in. "Yeah," Shota confirmed, his tone lacking any hint of excitement, just resignation. Hizashi took a deep breath, calming his racing thoughts. "And the other one?" he asked, curiosity piqued despite the bizarre nature of the confession. "Panther," came the straightforward reply, the word hanging in the air, amplifying the strangeness of it all. "I'm gonna need a minute." They found themselves in a counselor's office, a space designed for comfort and peace. The atmosphere was inviting, with soft lighting casting a warm glow throughout the room, and calming tones that seemed to wrap around them like a soothing blanket. It was clear this environment was intended to help children feel safe and at ease as they navigated their thoughts and emotions. Izuku sat between Aizawa and Hizashi, his heart racing as he felt the gentle weight of Butters curled in his lap, the small creature providing some measure of comfort in this tense moment. Behind him, Bastard perched on the chair like a sentinel, his presence both reassuring and slightly intimidating, as if ready to intervene at any moment. Across from them sat the Quirk counselor, a figure of calm determination, who leaned forward slightly, her eyes fixed on Izuku with a mixture of concern and professionalism. "Tell me again what happened," she prompted gently, hoping to draw out the details without pushing him too hard. Izuku swallowed hard, feeling the tension build in his chest as he grappled with the memories. "They were gonna hurt them," he began, his voice trembling slightly. His fingers tightened in Butters' soft fur, grounding himself in the present moment. "I didn't want that." The weight of those words hung heavily in the air, and he could feel the gravity of the situation pressing on him. The counselor remained silent, giving him the space to continue without interruption. After a brief pause, he took a shaky breath. "And then they changed." The counselor nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful yet encouraging. "Did you feel anything right before it happened?" Izuku furrowed his brow, searching the depths of his memory, trying to recall that pivotal moment with clarity. "Like something pushing out?" he finally replied, the revelation making his heart race anew. "Good," the counselor said gently, her voice steady and calm. "That helps." Her understanding gaze encouraged Izuku to delve deeper, reassuring him that sharing his truth was the right step to take. "Your quirk," the counselor began, adjusting her glasses as she looked intently at Aizawa. isn't just about transformation. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of curiosity mixing with skepticism. Its influence, she continued, her voice steady but laced with a sense of significance. Izuku blinked, digesting the idea. Influence? He repeated, his brow furrowing in confusion. The counselor smiled gently, as if preparing to unravel a complex puzzle. You don't just turn into various felines, she explained, leaning back in her chair. You connect to them on a deeper level. Hizashi, who had been silently absorbing the information, suddenly perked up and leaned forward, eager to grasp the thread of this revelation. Connect how? He inquired, his voice tinged with intrigue. Instinct, biology, form. The counselor's tone was thoughtful as she chose her words carefully. She glanced toward Butters and Bastard, who seemed equally invested in the discussion. You amplified their traits, she added, her eyes sparking with insight. Izuku's eyes widened in astonishment, the realization washing over him like a wave. I did that? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if the weight of the truth was beginning to settle in. Yes, the counselor affirmed with a nod, her expression encouraging. A brief pause hung in the air, thick with anticipation. Then, as if the room itself was charged with potential, she continued, And we believe you can do even more than that. The counselor lightly tapped her pen against the desk, the rhythmic sound punctuating the quiet room. So, we've explored the concept of transforming small felines into large ones, she began, her voice steady yet playful. She continued, a slight grin breaking her otherwise serious demeanor. And then there's the idea of transforming large felines into smaller counterparts. Though, she paused for effect, leaning in slightly, I highly doubt you'll be putting that theory to the test any time soon. Hizashi let out a bemused snort at the thought. Yeah, let's avoid throwing him into a lion enclosure, he joked, a hint of laughter in his tone, clearly envisioning the absurdity. The counselor nodded, her expression softening further. Please don't, they replied with a chuckle, appreciating the levity in the moment. Then her gaze shifted, focusing intently on Izuku, who sat quietly, absorbing every word. The atmosphere grew more serious as the counselor continued. And eventually, she trailed off, allowing that word to hang in the air for a moment. The anticipation was palpable. You might even have the opportunity to become one of those creatures yourself. A profound silence enveloped the room, each person lost in their thoughts. Izuku blinked, his mind racing with the implications of that statement. Like Butters? He ventured, still trying to grasp the idea. The counselor gently corrected him, her tone warm and encouraging. Like a lion, she clarified, her eyes sparkling with the excitement of possibility. Or perhaps something else entirely. Izuku's breath caught in his throat, not from fear, but from a deep sense of wonder and possibility, his imagination igniting with the thought of what he could become. That night, the air was heavy with anticipation as Aizawa stood with a determined expression. He didn't hesitate, his voice steady and firm. We're going to train this, he stated, his gaze unwavering. Hizashi blinked in surprise, his brow furrowing slightly. Already? He asked, taken aback by the urgency in Aizawa's tone. Aizawa's eyes flickered towards Izuku, who was watching them both intently. Yes, he replied, his tone brooking no argument. Before it gets worse and becomes uncontrollable. Izuku felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he processed that. His eyes dropped to the floor, shadowed with concern. Before he gets hurt, he added softly, recognizing the weight of Aizawa's words. Aizawa's terse demeanor softened just a fraction as he watched Izuku's resolve. With a slow nod, Izuku whispered, Okay, But then uncertainty crept in, and he hesitated, his fingers fidgeting. Can Shinso come too? He blurted out, his voice barely above a whisper. Aizawa's brows knitted together in a fleeting moment of surprise as he paused to consider the request. Why? He inquired, sensing the deeper motivation behind Izuku's suggestion. Izuku directed his gaze downward, his cheeks tinged with a hint of embarrassment as he confessed. He wants to be a hero, and he's not scared of me. His voice wavered, laden with vulnerability. That fragile admission struck a chord within Aizawa. He could see the sincerity in Izuku's eyes, a determination mixed with a genuine desire to support his friend. That was enough for Aizawa to nod in agreement. Shinso found himself standing at the towering gates of UA High School, his gaze lifted in awe at the massive structure that loomed above him. The intricate architecture, bustling with students and faculty, filled him with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This is where Erasure Head works? He murmured, barely able to contain his astonishment. Izuku stood beside him, nodded with a soft smile. Yeah, he replied, his voice laced with quiet pride. Shinso turned to him, a look of incredulity crossing his features. You just casually come here now? Izuku's eyes gleamed with a sense of belonging. I live with him. Shinso blinked, processing the information. Right, he said slowly, his mind racing with the implications of that statement. A brief pause hung in the air, thick with the weight of their shared experiences and unspoken thoughts. That's insane, Shinso finally remarked, shaking his head in disbelief. The training field lay undisturbed, an expanse of open ground under the clear sky, its atmosphere serene and inviting. It felt like a carefully engineered sanctuary, one that provided a sense of safety while also allowing for the control necessary in their training environment. It was an ideal setting for what was about to unfold. Aizawa stood before the group, his usual stoic demeanor unchanged, his hands casually tucked into the pockets of his black, lightly worn jacket. A faint breeze ruffled his hair as he surveyed the surroundings, his sharp eyes catching every detail of his students' expressions. We're starting simple, he declared, breaking the stillness in the air. Izuku nodded firmly, determination flickering in his bright green eyes. He was ready, or at least he hoped to be. Nearby, Shinso stood with a focused intensity, his gaze fixed on Izuku. Seated directly in front of Izuku, Butters and Bastard waited patiently. Their trusting eyes reflected a bond that had been cultivated through countless experiences together. They seemed to sense the weight of the moment, poised to act upon Izuku's command. Aizawa's expression hardened slightly, the weight of his responsibility evident in his sharp gaze. Izuku. The young hero gulped, feeling the gravity of Aizawa's stare. Yeah? He managed, his voice a mix of uncertainty and eagerness. Do what you did at the park. An unsettling knot formed in Izuku's stomach. I don't know how, he confessed, doubt creeping into his mind. Try, Aizawa urged, his tone steady and encouraging, yet unyielding, as he challenged Izuku to push beyond his limits. Izuku closed his eyes, drawing a deep breath as he tried to block out the chaos around him. He focused intently, his mind narrowing in on Butters, their shared bond flickering like a distant star in his consciousness. He thought of Bastard, the way their intertwining fates seemed to defy the odds. He sought that elusive feeling, the one that surged through his veins, the push of energy, the unmistakable connection that tethered him to them both. "Please," he whispered, his voice barely audible, filled with both desperation and hope. For a brief moment, silence enveloped him, heavy and suffocating. He cracked open one eye, peering into the empty space before him, his heart sinking with the realization of failure. "I can't," he murmured, the weight of inadequacy settling like a stone in his chest. "Again," Aizawa said, his voice calm and steady, cutting through Izuku's spiral of frustration. There was no pressure, no disappointment in Aizawa's tone, just an unwavering belief in the power of persistence. "Just try," he urged, a simple command that held the promise of possibility. Izuku felt a flicker of determination ignite within him, urging him to dig deeper, to push past the boundaries he had set for himself. Izuku took a deep breath and steadied himself, determination flooding his mind as he focused once more. This time, he pushed aside the gnawing tendrils of fear that tried to claw their way into his thoughts. Instead, he concentrated on something far more powerful, his desire to protect those he held dear. He envisioned warmth radiating from his loved ones, the sense of safety and the longing that filled his heart, as if he was enveloped in an unbreakable bond of family. Then, as if responding to his fervent emotions, something within him sparked to life. He felt a faint pulse ripple through the air, a delicate surge of energy that seemed to vibrate with promise. Beside him, Butters, with his keen senses, caught the shift in the atmosphere, his ears twitching slightly as he turned his head toward the source of the energy. Meanwhile, Bastard's tail flicked with an eager intensity, a clear sign of recognition and anticipation. As Izuku's focus deepened, he noticed a shimmering glow surrounding their forms, a twinkling manifestation that hung in the air for just a moment, a fleeting glimpse of the potential that had been locked away. It was a delicate moment, almost ethereal, and then the glow settled, leaving behind a tangible, albeit faint, aura. Izuku's breath hitched in his throat, a rush of exhilaration flooding through him. "I did something." His eyes sparkled with disbelief and excitement as the realization washed over him. "Yes," Aizawa replied, his tone steady and reassuring, a hint of pride flickering in his gaze. "You did." Izuku's heart raced as he turned the implications over in his mind, the weight of his progress settling into place. "Again," he breathed, a mixture of awe and determination swirling within him, knowing he was one step closer to mastering his abilities. Izuku stood firmly in front of Butters and Bastard, feeling a mix of anticipation and nerves coursing through him. The two figures were small, yet imposing, their presence demanding his attention. The atmosphere was charged with a quiet intensity as they waited, their expressions betraying none of the thoughts running through their minds. Beside him, Shinso leaned casually against his side, his eyes keenly focused on the scene unfolding. There was a sense of calm about him, a reassuring steadiness that contrasted with Izuku's inner turmoil. "You got this," Shinso said, his voice low and steady, cutting through the silence like a lifeline. Izuku glanced at him, searching for that spark of confidence he desperately needed. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment press down on him. "I'll try," he replied, resolve flickering in his chest like a flame, ready to ignite. Before this moment, there had only been a whirlwind of feelings, fear gripping his heart, panic clawing at his throat, and instinct urging him into flight. Now, the stillness of the atmosphere was pierced by Aizawa's steady voice, cutting through like a beacon in the fog of uncertainty. "Don't reach for the panic," he advised, his tone firm yet calm. Izuku blinked, momentarily surprised, his mind racing to catch up. "Then what do I use?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, vulnerability etched across his features. Aizawa paused, giving him a moment to gather himself before responding. "Why do you want to do it?" Izuku's gaze drifted downwards as he looked at Butters, the loyal creature nestled close, and then at Bastard, his steadfast friend. He thought about the deep bond they shared and the unwavering trust reflected in their eyes. Through every challenge, they had stood by him, shielding him from harm, and now they were relying on him. The weight of their expectations settled on him like a heavy cloak. "Because," he breathed out, the words trembling on his lips as a sense of determination began to unfurl within him. "I want to protect them, too." Aizawa regarded him intently, nodding once, the flicker of approval evident in his expression. "Good. Use that." With Aizawa's words echoing in his mind, a flicker of courage ignited within Izuku, grounding him in purpose as he prepared to face whatever lay ahead. Izuku gently closed his eyes, seeking to center himself in the moment. He wasn't trying to force anything or grasp tightly to the feeling. Instead, he was simply reaching out. He focused on the warmth that enveloped him, the connection he felt deep within. He could hear Butters softly purring nearby, a soothing sound that wrapped around him like a cozy blanket. The air was still, and he could sense Bastard's quiet presence beside him, sturdy and unwavering. It felt safe, as if the world outside had faded away, leaving just the three of them in a cocoon of tranquility. In that serene space, he felt the profound sense of family that bound them together, an unbreakable thread woven through their hearts. And this time, without hesitation or fear, it answered back, echoing the warmth and love he had reached for. The atmosphere shifted ever so slightly. At first it was subtle, an almost imperceptible ripple that flitted through the air, accompanied by a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in tandem with the heartbeat of the room. Shinso, sensing the change, straightened his posture slightly, his instincts honed and alert. "It's happening," he said, his voice a mix of anticipation and curiosity. Butters lifted her head with a regal air, while Bastard, with an air of mischief, rose to all fours, their bodies beginning to shimmer. It wasn't a violent transformation like the frenzied shifts seen in past encounters. There was no tearing or snapping as they morphed. Instead, this was a smooth unfolding, a gradual expansion of fur and the extension of limbs. Power blossomed within them, a newfound strength that felt as if it were being carefully guided rather than violently unleashed onto the world. And then, where once two playful house cats had lounged, a majestic lioness emerged, her golden eyes glowing with brilliance and calm confidence. The sight was breathtaking, a living embodiment of strength and grace. Beside her, Bastard had transformed into a sleek black panther, his body taut with controlled power, muscles coiled with an innate elegance. The air felt charged, yet there was an overwhelming sense of stillness. No chaos reigned in this moment, only the palpable essence of pure power. "That's insane," Shinso muttered under his breath, awe coloring his tone. The transformation was incredible, leaving no room for fear, only wonder. You just turned them into that, he continued, eyes wide with disbelief as the enormity of it sank in. Izuku's face brightened, a small but radiantly joyful smile breaking across his features. Yeah, he confirmed, his voice filled with a proud excitement. There was a brief pause, as if the air itself held its breath, and then Izuku added with a hint of playful pride, "They look really cool, right?" Shinso huffed softly, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, they do," he replied, marveling at the creatures now standing before them. Suddenly, Aizawa's authoritative tone cut through the moment. "Bring them back," he instructed, his voice steady yet commanding. Izuku's brow furrowed in hesitation. "How?" Aizawa's gaze softened slightly as he guided him. "Same way you held it." Realization dawned on Izuku as he processed the instruction. "Let go," he said, the weight of what he was about to do settling in. Taking a deep breath, he focused, gathering his thoughts. Then, with careful intention, he released the energy. The lioness began to shrink, her form slowly softening as she reverted back to her original feline shape. The panther followed suit, muscles relaxing and losing their formidable tension until, where giants had stood moments before, two familiar house cats emerged, looking up with wide, innocent eyes. Butters, ever affectionate, immediately trotted forward, leaping gracefully into Izuku's arms, purring as she nestled against him. Bastard sauntered to his side, rubbing against his leg with a contented purr, as if nothing extraordinary had transpired. Izuku chuckled softly, warmth blooming in his chest as he greeted them. "Hi." Hizashi, witnessing the scene unfold, wiped at his eyes, elation bubbling within him. "He did it! Shota, he did it!" he exclaimed, disbelief and pride mingling in his tone. Aizawa, his gaze lingering on Izuku, acknowledged the accomplishment with understated pride. "Yeah, on command," Hizashi added, still basking in the wonder of it all. "Yeah," Aizawa replied, turning his full attention to Izuku, a new depth in his gaze. He wasn't just a kid they were protecting anymore. He was evolving into something more, a force to be reckoned with. With a firm yet supportive tone, Aizawa declared, "We're continuing training," as if sealing the promise of growth and potential. Izuku nodded immediately, determination lighting up his eyes. "Okay," he affirmed, his response immediate and without a trace of hesitation or fear, ready to embrace whatever challenge lay ahead. As they gathered their belongings, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the training grounds. Shinso strolled beside Izuku, a contemplative look on his face. "Hey," he called out, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Yeah?" Izuku replied, turning to give him his full attention. "Next time," Shinso's voice trailed off for a moment as he searched for the right words. "Yeah?" Izuku prompted, curiosity piqued by the mysterious tone in Shinso's voice. "Make them chase me." A hint of mischief danced in Shinso's eyes as he spoke, his lips curling into a subtle smirk. Izuku blinked in surprise, processing the unexpected suggestion. "What?" he managed to stammer out. Shinso's smirk widened slightly, clearly enjoying the moment. "Training," he clarified, his tone light yet earnest. A brief pause hung in the air, filled with unspoken camaraderie. Then, without warning, Izuku burst into laughter. It was soft and genuine, a sound that echoed his appreciation for Shinso's playful challenge. "Okay," Izuku finally replied, a grin spreading across his face, fully on board with the idea.
ちで濡れたまま震える君、小さな背中触れられず、名前もまだ持たないまま、灰色の子猫、目を閉じたまま、世界はどんな風に聞こえるの、怖くないよ、ここにいるよ、ゆっくりでいい、僕を覚えて。空き缶の横にそっとぬるくなったミルクを置いて、近づくたび逃げてゆくその足音も覚えてきた。